how to move out at 18 or maybe a couple years later. Maybe you have strict or neglectful parents, or you just want to get out as soon as possible for whatever reason. Well, you're going to need to know some stuff, and you're going to have your stuff together to an extent. Now, there's of course like workarounds and ways you can do it. Maybe you can go to a friend's house to start or whatever, and you might need to do that. But this is going to be how to do it all on your own and actually have a foundation and start living on your own. So, the first thing you're going to need is a job. Hopefully, you're able to get one before you're 18. You start working, you have steady income. Hopefully, you have some money saved because that's another thing you're going to need. But at the very least, you will need money coming in. So, number one thing you'll need, of course, is a job. And it might seem obvious, but you need to write all these things down, break down the expenses and the income you have coming in so you'll know if you're going to be able to make it. Figure out if you're going to need a car or if you can walk to places or if you can walk to work. If you need a car, try looking up some in your area for cheap. I would recommend buying a car in cash if possible. Just buy something to get you point A to point B. It doesn't have to be something crazy, and it's better to not have monthly payments when you're trying to get built up, if you can. And then, of course, you'll have to figure out a living situation. If you're just trying to move out, you might need to do a roommate situation. It's a lot more affordable, and your roommates can become friends and they can help you sort of get on your feet and figure out how to begin life. So you can search on Craigslist in your area. Just be aware there's sometimes scams. You can ask around, word of mouth. Sometimes the best opportunities come from that. And again, if you have a job, you can ask people around your job. If anyone has a room they'd be willing to rent to you, you can just let them know your situation and they'll keep an ear out for you. Generally, people want to help. So let people know what you want and what you're looking for, and something might come your way. As far as stuff like physical items, you really don't need much. You'll need just some clothes for work, whatever that means to you. But actually, in order to move out, you don't even need it. You don't need anything but the clothes on your back, really, because all that stuff can be replaced. All of it can be purchased. And that's why the number one most important thing is a source of income and some money. Having money saved is going to be a lifesaver. Online, you'll see most people recommend having a few months of living expenses saved up. A lot of times you'll see it's a 6 months living expenses saved up. You don't necessarily need that much if it's holding you back from ever starting. You can do hopefully you just have a couple of $1,000. And having a backup plan would be nice, but if you've got to get started, just go for it. As long as you've done the breakdown of your monthly expenses and your monthly income, and you can make it and still have some money left to save every month, you'll be okay. And be conservative with those estimates. Like, always assume what you're going to be spending is a little more and what you're going to be making is a little less, just because there's always going to be some unexpected expenses and things coming up. I'm also a big believer in manifesting. So when you're writing down all the stuff you need and planning it out, also write down your ideal situation, what it would look like, what you're hoping to achieve out of this, what you hope to gain from moving out, and what you want it to look like. Just write it all down and visualize it as clearly as possible and start manifesting that life for yourself. And I recommend, you might not have all the elements. You might not have a job lined up and housing lined up and a big savings and a plan. It's really hard to get all of it lined up. And then if that's going to prevent you from ever taking a step forward, that's not good. But I recommend at least having one foot on the ground. At least if you can have one or two of those boxes checked, you can make a move and you can figure the rest of the stuff out on the way. So when I moved out, I said, I need to have one of two things lined up, a job or housing. And the other one I know I can figure out. If I have a job, I'll ask them if they know of any housing nearby that I can rent. Or if I find housing first, I will move there. I have a couple of months expenses to hold me over, and I'll just apply for jobs near where I'm going to live. So at least having one of those two things can help me find the other. And just having one foot on the ground really helps you get started. So in my case, I found the housing first, and then I just applied for several jobs nearby, and I got one of them, and it covered my expenses and allowed me to live where I lived. So, and I couldn't move out as soon as I wanted. Of course, I wanted to move out at 18, but I worked for a few years to save up. So I worked until I was about 22. So then I had a few months living expenses that I knew I could land somewhere and figure it all out and have that safety cushion. And then I told myself, if I get below a certain amount, I'm going to abort mission and do my backup plan, or crash on a friend's couch. You know, that's not, of course, plan A, but I kind of had that in the back of my mind, like, worst case scenario, worst comes to worst, like, what am I going to do to prevent me from, like, sleeping on the street? Because that's what moving out is all about. And yeah, if you have your parents for backup, if you have someone as a backup plan, you are so blessed and lucky, and you can be more risky. Because a lot of times, if you want to move out if you're looking at this and you want to move out at 18, it's probably because you want to get away from your parents and not rely on them, or can't rely on them. And so it's really important to not go down. There's a lot of bad paths you can go down, but if you can just get your stuff together, save some money, and be able to have your own back and rely on yourself, you're carving a new path for yourself. You know, you might not have it easy, or it might seem that way, but you've got it. Yeah, it's pretty simple. I think we make it more complicated than it needs to be, but that's what you need: income, housing, and from there, you'll figure the rest out. And write it down. Writing everything down and seeing it laid out on paper. Get that out of your head because it gets all jumbly in there. Put it all out on paper and see the plan laid out in front of you and go for it. You've got it.